I've been saying for a long time that the Suns need to shake things up, and boy, did they. Welcome in or welcome back. I'm actually surprised about the Suns. I'm surprised that they didn't tear everything down to the studs and trade away Devin Booker as well, but honestly, as a neutral fan, I think that the league is better for having Devin Booker in Phoenix for now. I'm not sure that this team is actually optimized to win right this second, but I do think they have a lot of interesting pieces. I also can't count out Devin Booker, not even for a second. He's been overlooked over the last couple of seasons because Kevin Durant was his running mate, but I think now is the time for Devin Booker to remind the world who the fuck he is. But we are getting slightly ahead of ourselves. We need to talk about what the Suns did in the draft. Honestly, for the hand that they were dealt, I think that the Suns did a pretty decent job at drafting. They picked up Kaman Malawach out of Duke, Rasheer Fleming, and Kobe Barea. The easiest one to say could have a very solid career is the lottery pick in Kaman Malawach. I think he's going to turn out to be a very solid pro. I think he's very raw right now, and I think it's going to take a couple years to get him up to speed. But in my head, his peak version of himself is a better passing Clint Capella. If you got to watch any of the Duke games last year, you got to see his feel for the game. He's not going to be someone who averages 7 or 8 assists a game, but I think a really solid and respectable 4 assists a game could be in his future. Now, I do think that he has some hurdles in front of him because the Suns now also employ Nick Richards and Mark Williams, but I wouldn't be surprised if he finally broke through about midway through the season. I like Rasheer Fleming a lot. The Celtics were in play to trade up for him, so I'm kind of bummed out that we didn't get to do that. But I think that he could be a very serviceable pro. I just don't know how much time he's actually going to get in the NBA. And it's pretty clear why the Suns brought him in. He is a floor spacer. He shot 39% from 3 last year, and that is such a valuable skill, especially in today's NBA. In college, he shot 5 threes a game, shooting that almost 40% clip, and I don't think that that's going to be a one-to-one comparison to what he could do in the NBA just because of the shot volume that he could possibly get. But what I do know is that when he's on the floor with Devin Booker and he requires that double team, Rasheer Fleming's going to be open, and more often than not, he's going to hit. Because you have to think about it. The way that this roster is constructed right now, Devin Booker is the point guard. I think that he's perfectly capable of that, obviously, but because he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot, he is going to need to be surrounded by release valves, and I think Rasheer could be one of those guys. And speaking of Devin Booker, let's talk about a re-signing, a 2-year deal. Devin got a bag. Now, if I were honest with myself, and you, which y'all always try to be, I was very shocked that Devin Booker did not request a trade after Kevin Durant got traded. But, like I said before, I think that the league is better when you are able to develop a star in one city for a very long time. And I'm not naive. I'm very aware that the reason that Devin Booker signed this contract is part of the game. You sign the contract, you get the money, and later if you don't like your situation, you ask out. But if I were to look at it on just the face of it, it is very, very nice to see that Devin Booker, at least in public, wants to stick with this franchise that drafted him and that he took to the finals. I believe that Devin Booker wants to be in Phoenix, and I think on some level, this contract extension proves that. Now, before we talk about the very big departures, we have to talk about the additions they got in return, and they have some interesting pieces. Dillon Brooks, Jalen Green, and Mark Williams. I want to dislike Dillon Brooks as a player, but for all of his flaws, he gives this Phoenix team something that they haven't had for a very long time, and that is a reliable wing defender. He'll be a streaky shooter. He'll rub some of his teammates the wrong way. Hell, he may even be suspended a couple times, but at least he'll play defense. That's the addition that makes the most sense. Now we have to talk about the ones that don't make as much sense. Jalen Green seems like a very weird fit next to Devin Booker. Like we have already talked about, Devin Booker's going to have to play that traditional point guard role, and I think that's going to be perfectly fine for him, but I don't think that Jalen Green is the ideal backcourt partner for him. And it really just boils down to one thing. The problem with Jalen Green last year, really his whole career, but last year specifically, is consistency. We would see him score 40 points one night and then take 5 games to score 40 points in total. I think for a lot of players, especially a lot of young players, you need structure to break bad habits, and I'm not positive that Jalen is going to get a ton of structure here. At bare minimum, really more than anything, I think that this potentially could just be a 1-year rehab project for Jalen Green for the Suns to flip him for something else down the line. Jalen Green wasn't the only confusing move. Mark Williams confuses me too. It really only confuses me because you already had Nick Richards, and there had to be some sort of plan that you were going to draft Kaman Malawach. It doesn't make sense to have those 3 in the same locker room. All 3 of them essentially do the exact same thing, which means that one of them is going to be relegated to just warming the bench. And if that's the case, I think that he may be the one that rides the pine. If he doesn't, I would love to see more defensive effort from him. I mean, for God's sakes, he has a 9-foot wingspan. He should be blocking every third shot that comes his way. I'm really not sure how that's going to work out this season. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them are on the move as well. And now we're finally here. The departures, and boy, did the Phoenix Suns have a busy offseason. A couple days ago, my Orlando Magic video came out, and I talked about Tyus Jones being my favorite individual move of the entire offseason for him going to Orlando. I don't think that Phoenix will miss him as much as Orlando will appreciate him, just because Devin Booker is going to play that traditional point guard role. But I can't not mention it. When Tyus Jones was in Phoenix, and very rarely when Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal and Devin Booker were all on the floor, he did get the best out of them. So again, I don't think that it's going to be missed a lot, but I think it will be missed slightly. And then in the first video in this series, I talked about the Clippers and what Bradley Beal could bring to the table for them. Now for Phoenix, I understand why you wouldn't want him on the roster anymore, and it's really just because of his money. I understand that 17, 4, and 3 on 38% from 3 is not the kind of stats that you want your $50 million player making. So the departure from Phoenix was very much deserved. But if it's at all possible, you can't deny the fact that he was good as a basketball player, point blank. If you just can forget about how much money he's making, he was perfectly fine as a basketball player. I still think that Bradley Beal is a very good player. I understand from Phoenix's perspective why you wouldn't want him on the team. For both parties, it was just time to move on. And I think for Phoenix, it's going to be very nice to not have that financial burden on your team. Now let's talk about the big fish in Kevin Durant. I can't deny that this team is going to look drastically different from last year, but I think it was time. I don't think that it's Kevin Durant's fault that this team didn't work out either, by the way, but I also think that this team kind of peaked based on their financial flexibility. I mean, just between Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant, that was like $150 million, and that's way too much money to sink into 3 guys and then relying on essentially vet minimum players. Kevin Durant is still obviously incredible. He's going to average 27 points a game next year on 50, 40, 90 like he almost always does. But I do think that this was just time to get rid of an aging superstar, and you got what you could out of him. The West, like most years really, is super tough this year, so I just don't see the Suns making a sneaky surprise run. I mean, even with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, even though they didn't play many games together, they only won 36 games last year. I love Devin Booker. I think he's incredible. I think that because he's in year 10 or 11 now in the league, he has this ability to backpack a little bit, but I just don't see this team winning more than 25 games next year. And also, not to point out the obvious here, but they don't have very many first-round draft picks over the next couple of years, so I think that should be concerning to fans. This is going to be a pretty rough year for Phoenix Suns fans. There isn't much to look forward to this year or in the future, but Devin Booker is going to be an all-star, and he might average 35 a night, so that'll be fun. But am I wrong? Do you think that the Suns could make some noise? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're down there, check my description. Got a link tree with all of my socials, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky. I am everywhere. I also have a Discord link down there. I'd love for you to be able to join. We have a ton of fun over there. Be on the lookout for your favorite team in the series. Be kind. Tell somebody you love them. And I'll see you in the next one.
Barely scraping by. Trying to stop puffing. I'm trying to be one of the greats.